So we're doing things a little differently today. We've decided to host today's event in the webinar format. And so in lieu of audio intros, as I was saying, it'd be great if folks can introduce themselves in the chat. So share your name, the city you live in, organization, and also, if relevant, how you know Senator Beall. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started here by introducing Senator Beall. Many of us know that Jim Beall's roots in Santa Clara County run very, very deep. He was born in San Jose. He's a lifelong resident. He graduated from Bellarmine and then went on to San Jose State to get a degree in political science. He has spent 4 decades in public service, starting out as a San Jose planning commissioner. Then he went to city council, county supervisor, legislator in the assembly, and then the state senate. And, you know, now that Kamala's seat is open, maybe he'll go for, you know, California state senator. No, just kidding. Oh, no. But he's basically worn every hat you could potentially wear in the public service realm. Many of us know that he's a humongous advocate for housing, starting out at San Jose State, where his role as a housing advocate was to report landlords for rental discrimination and to help folks find housing for homeless students. I wanted to share one of the very first times, I should say here, my name is Shiloh Ballard. I'm on the board of SV at Home and helped to found the organization a few years ago and spent 14 years working in housing policy. I now work for the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, but I remember the first time that I heard Senator Beall speak about housing, and it might not even have been a housing related talk, but I remember he made a point to say, housing is a linchpin. And I remember just being struck by that. And I've heard him say it many times since then, but he's one of those folks who understands that if you have housing over your head, the rest of your life is gonna go so much better. You know, kids can learn in school. If you've got mental illness, it's incredibly important to have a stable roof over your head. So I'm going to stop there and pass the mic over to Senator Beall at 12:30. I'm going to try to keep us on time, so I'll break in and then we'll go to the awards portion. So Senator Beall, take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to talk for a little bit and maybe keep it short, and then we can have questions, okay? So I'm going to do it that way. I want to thank everybody for getting on this this program. This is great. You know, I'm going to talk about the accomplishments of the legislature, but then sort of talk about our frustrations about things we wanted to do, but haven't been able to do for various reasons, political and otherwise, financial. So I think the legislature has been talking about housing, and it first started to get some traction, I think, in 2017. And Senator Atkins and I and Senator Skinner and several other senators got together, and we formed like sort of a caucus for housing. And as you know, Senator Atkins is very interested in housing, as well as Senator Skinner and me, from probably maybe different perspectives. And we passed SB 2 and SB 3, which provided, I think 2 was Atkins' bill and my bill was 3, SB 3 in 2017. It provided a ballot measure, SB 3, my bill, for 2018 to put on the ballot $4 billion housing bond. And we actually tried to get Governor Brown at the time to get a bigger one. We wanted a $7 and $8 billion bond, but he was not for the debt service required for that. So we had to scale it back. And we finally got a deal at $4 billion. I kind of feel bad about that. It could have been much higher. Obviously could have been approved because it was approved by millions of votes in California. We could have gotten we had some room there for a higher bond measure. Senator Atkins had her bill, which took some real estate fees and created a $250 million a year ongoing source of funds for our housing community development department to provide affordable housing. So we had the bond funds, we had the SB2 funds, and then we have the general funds. Okay, so that's a source of housing funding in California. We also have some federal funds, not too much. We hope that Biden will increase the, or actually, I'll say this, create from scratch, because there's really nothing at the federal government right now, create from scratch a totally new housing and community development department and program. We have to create it from scratch because it's literally, there's nothing there. They dropped the ball. And then we have our local governments have done a pretty good job in passing bonds, various programs to fund some housing, but their source of revenue is limited given their fiscal situations as well. So we want to build a with Governor Newsom. There's been kind of a differing philosophy between the Senate and the governor. Let's be honest, the Senate wants to have like an ongoing, permanent, ongoing source of funds. And we believe that housing is central to curing poverty, reducing our caseloads in CalWORKs and Medi-Cal, creating jobs. For every $1 billion you spend, it's about 13,000 construction jobs, and then all those people buy groceries and spend money on other things, all the other things that people that all of a sudden have a middle class job, can spend money on. And we need jobs right now. So housing construction could be an economic stimulus right now that we would get great returns. Now, why not sell some more bonds? I think that would be one of the questions for next year in the legislature. Guess what? Bond interest rates. You see how low the interest rates are? The interest rates are lower than the construction cost index by about 2 to 3%. So it's cheaper to sell bonds and finance things than it is to just pay as you go and wait every year to have the construction costs go up 4 or 5% a year was what it's been. So I think financing housing next year will be a major topic. I had a bill, SB 795, that didn't make it through last year. And I think it was mainly because of the COVID situation, to be honest about. We lost a lot of housing bills in the legislative process throughout the year due to the COVID. Everybody was scaling back their, I think 2/3 of the bills that were introduced in January were dropped by March or April in the legislature. So there was a real scaling back. So we work with the governor. The governor has yet to say that he wants to have an ongoing housing program. And I think what happened was, because he's doing this year by year and piece by piece and that kind of thing, I think he got caught with this recent audit that came out. And the audit showed that there was a diffuse kind of housing program in California. There was no consolidated master plan or big picture plan that the Senate wanted the governor to do. And so I think we're going to use the audit to get some momentum. They, because I won't be there, they will get, Dave and the rest of them will get some momentum going out of this audit to kind of go into the idea that we should have a fixed, ongoing, dependable source of revenue for housing at the statewide level. And then also enable local governments to finance housing by giving them economic vehicles, financial vehicles to finance at the local level housing. Why do we want to do that? Because I think politically, telling local government, hey, you got to build all this housing, and then not coming up with the vehicles to finance it is kind of a bad political equation, quite frankly. I think you have to do both. I think the local governments have to be accountable. They have to propose land use planning changes that produce and cite affordable housing projects. Everybody should be doing that, all cities. But they also should have the money to finance the affordable housing projects and help finance it. Why do I say that? Now, a lot of people say, well, just require the developers to do inclusionary zoning. Well, inclusionary zoning has never dropped into the 50% or 30% of the median family income area, which the Department of Housing and Community Development has said is 80% of the need that we have in California. It's especially with the COVID and the people that are laid off, we really have a need at the lowest level. We have some shortage at the mid-range affordable housing level, also true. We don't have a real shortage at upper income or medium upper income housing in California. There might be some shortages in certain areas due to their local economics, but overall in the state, as a state policy, no, we have a shortage, and it's over 1 million housing units. Everybody disputes how much, but everybody agrees it's over 1 million housing units. So let's not argue about the final number. It's going to be 1 million. So how much money do we need to do that? Well, if we had some money from the federal government, local government, and state government that came in at about $7 or $8 billion a year, that would probably produce quite a few housing units, and maybe in about 10 years, get this, 10 years at that level of funding, we would hit the $1 million. So tough problem, right? But at the same time, by investing in housing, what are you doing? You're lowering costs in other areas of government. Criminal justice costs, homeless cost. You know, we have a child welfare system that if persons have a home, their families can become more stable. Kids start getting better school scores when they have a place to live. Some of the superintendents in the area told me that I asked them what the biggest problem they have in their school districts, you know, and I talked to them, and a few of them have said, hey, you know, the biggest problem we have is we have too many kids that don't have a place to live, and they can't study and can't get good grades as best. They can't be their highest achievement because of that. And so it's actually kind of a moral shame on our part that we don't provide affordable housing. Now, some people would argue, okay, the cities, you know, we got to protect the neighborhoods and all this kind of stuff. Well, I agree with that, but I also agree that good planning can overcome that. There's obviously a lot of creative people that can design and build affordable housing that can fit into areas around single family neighborhoods. But we have to do good planning for that. And I think we ought to support good planning. So cities, I want you to do some good planning, but I want you to implement, which a lot of people haven't on a long-term basis, citing for areas with affordable housing. So I'm giving you some messages. I gave Dave a message, try to find the money, which is, you know, we have to do that every year. So it's a hard job, right? He signed up for it, right, David? So get the dough and let's go. Okay, that's what I always say. So I think housing discrimination. I want to talk about that at the end here. When I started my work in housing, the first campaign I worked on in a political sense was in 1968 in San Jose. There's a law in California. It's in the state constitution. It's Article 34. It requires that any public housing that's built in a community has to be approved by the voters in that area. And we have to get rid of that law. That has to be removed. because it was put into effect in about the time I was born. I was born in 1951, if you can believe it, folks. But the year before I was born, this law was approved by an initiative process by the real estate people. It was a year after the federal government said you cannot discriminate against people in the sale and rental of housing. So there's a federal law passed in 1949, but in 1950, California responded by saying no public housing unless it's built, approved by the voters. So in 1968, San Jose attempted to do this and it failed. And there was an ad in the paper, in the Mercury News, and I'm trying to get out of the Mercury News archives this. So I'd like somebody to help me on it because I'm not too good at this stuff. But there was an ad in the paper. It had people walking, and it said Oakland in this direction, San Jose in this direction, and it had people walking from Oakland to San Jose and saying, let's go down to San Jose where they have that good, cheap public housing. And it was people with Afro hairdos. And, that was in our local paper in 1968 after the civil rights laws were passed. Okay. And when I was at San Jose State, we did a survey, and I was the housing coordinator at the student government at San Jose State. We did a survey of black and Hispanic and whites, and students trying to rent housing around San Jose State. And you know what we found? We found that 50% of the time, the African-American and black students had higher rents, higher clean deposits, security deposits. The unit wasn't available even sometimes. So 50% of the time there was some element of discrimination. Okay. Now, when I see discrimination, I consider that a criminal felony. And we ought to have hard enforcement of the civil rights laws here in California on fair housing. If somebody takes money from you and charges you a higher rent or a higher clean deposit or because of your race, that's like stealing your money. And if it's over a certain amount of money, it's a felony. So we should have prosecution of those people. Okay, I'm tough on some of this stuff, but I'm just saying that's the law, for God's sakes. Let's get something done about that. So enforcing the fair housing laws, I think is really important. And we did in San Jose. After we did that survey, we went to the city and they started doing the enforcement, thanks to Mayor Norman Mineta at the time. What should we do about this audit? Well, I looked at the audit that came out, and everybody should get a copy of it. You can ask me, I'll send it to you. The auditor came up with several recommendations, and I think the auditor pointed out the wastefulness of money because there's no one centralized, coordinated leader that is in charge of all the housing programs. I think that's a problem. Ongoing, stable source of funding is a big problem. Economic impact is a big problem. We need jobs here in California. We got to rebound, and housing construction can be a source of jobs. So I think we need to take care of that. To me, these are barriers. I'm pointing out a lot of barriers that need to be overcome. What the auditor came up with was similar to what the state Senate was recommending back in 2017 to the governor: a comprehensive program, a long-term strategy, a long-term, stable, ongoing source of funding that could be built up over time, and to fund on a regular basis, an ongoing basis, a housing program for California. The auditor is pointing out inefficiencies, and we have a new HCD director, and that new director should take the audit and implement it. Okay, so there's that. There's still a lot of buzz about what to do with cities, and I think we need a little breather and start to kind of like take a deep breath and kind of figure out how we can make it all work together. So there has to be some sort of intergovernmental housing planning organization created so we can do the, like, let's work as a team together and not end up having a bunch of lawsuits, everybody suing everybody, all that kind of mess that kind of slows everything down politically. I mean, even literally in terms of projects. Don't you think we should streamline the projects? I mean, it's hard enough to find land that you can buy for affordable housing. But what about, you know, streamlining the projects and maybe not having the fees high for if you show a need in your community for affordable housing, allow you to kind of figure out how to reduce the fees for those kinds of projects. I think finding sites, we had a bill, SB, I think it was SB 6, we did that bill, and that bill will provide state government properties that are available if there's available state surplus properties that the governor and the HCD can work with the cities to create affordable housing sites. Homelessness, I don't know why people don't understand in the Department of Finance that building housing for homeless people saves the state a ton of money. What's wrong with their minds when they don't fiscally figure that out? There's been plenty of studies over the last decade. We keep telling them, fund the homeless. So we did this No Place Like Home ballot measure with $2 billion for mentally ill homeless. And that was with the Mental Health Services Act. I happen to chair the Senate Select Committee on Mental Health. And I believe that that would be a good source of money for that kind of project. So I'll leave it at that. And I appreciate everybody looking ahead, not looking at what I've done, but talking about, like, what are we going to do now? And I'm going to be part of that as an advocate now. So I appreciate everybody's time and energy on the subject. So thank you all very much. Okay.
Thank you, Senator Beall. That was a great run through of lots of great substantive stuff during your tenure in the Senate and the Assembly. At this point, what I want to do is, we wanted to specially honor Senator Beall, and what I also failed to mention is you're seeing my face up here, and I'm helping to guide us through this because our fearless executive director, Leslye Corsiglia, is unable to be with us. But fortunately, right now, we have a video presentation from Leslye to specially honor Senator Beall to present the Lifetime Achievement Award on behalf of SV at Home. So with that, I am going to pass it off to Kriti, who I think is going to share her screen and get the video going. And while she's doing that, there we go. I'll just recognize Kevin Zwick and Mary Murdoch are both here as well, and they are board members of SV at Home.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leslye Corsiglia. I'm Executive Director of Silicon Valley at Home, and I'm excited to be here today to honor Senator Beall for his 40 years of service to our community and to the residents of the state of California. We had hoped to do this before in person last May during Affordable Housing Week, and unfortunately, due to the circumstances, we have to do this virtually. Many may not know that I have known Senator Beall for many, many years. In fact, at one point, he was my boss when he was a member of the City Council in San Jose, and I was the Assistant Director of Housing for the department after it had been created. And Senator Beall was a sitting council member when San Jose's housing department was created. Another interesting fact. Today, we want to honor the senator for all of his great work that he's done over all of these years at all of the different levels of government where he has served. And I want to highlight a couple of things that are really important to us in the housing community. One is most recently that he was the author of Senate Bill 3, which was called the Veterans and Affordable Housing Act of 2018. And it authorized the issuance of $4 billion in general obligation bonds for affordable housing programs and veterans homeownership. That was the single largest housing bond, ever approved by the voters in California, and it's going to have a tremendous impact for the years to come. The senator was instrumental in both pushing forward his proposal and then also seeing it to victory with the voters of California in 2018. The senator also was the leader of the Senate Housing Committee for many years, and in that role, he was a champion for affordable housing and pushed through many important bills that are helping us do our work today. So I want to give the award, and hopefully you're going to have this in person tomorrow. This is the special award from Silicon Valley at Home. It is unique and one of a kind. It is hand painted by Silicon Valley at Home staff and our former staff member, Gina Lee, who was the main artist and behind all of these bricks. But it's very unique and it's not something that we give out freely. So it's to us, it's very special. It says here, Senator Jim Beall, SB at Home Lifetime Achievement Award, November 2020, for your unwavering commitment to housing. And we really believe that. We look forward to seeing what you do in the future. And we hope that you continue to be a houser and come out to SB at Home events. So congratulations and thank you so much for all of your many years of service.
And I'll just echo Leslie's thanks. Well deserved. You have been such a wonderful champion of housing. And so now we're actually going to go to an even more exciting portion of our agenda where we're going to put you on the hot seat a little bit and ask you some really tough questions. So I've got some questions here. Folks have been feeding stuff to the chat box and the Q&A box. And we're going to start with an easy one. And that is, of all the different hats you've worn in terms of a public sector role, an elected role, whether it's planning commission, city council, all the way up to state senate, what has been your favorite role and why? Well,
Probably being a state senator because I was able to get that bond approved. My transportation measure is also the biggest one in the history of the state. That's SB 1. You see the signs on the freeway, whatever. But I say the state senate, my work on housing, transportation, foster care, and mental health and substance abuse I found a lot of support and enjoyable experiences. I think this last year was kind of tough for everybody, as we can imagine. We had to do everything the social distancing way. So leaving without being with my colleagues was kind of hard. I love mentoring my colleagues, the ones that are interested. I help them with their bills, free of charge, if you want to say it that way politically. So don't just help everybody move this stuff along. So I enjoyed being a state senator, I think. I'm sure Dave will enjoy it also. I had great staff. My local staff here was great. And then of course my longtime chief of staff, 22 years, Sunshine Barilli, was fantastic in getting the coalitions built and getting the groups supporting our bills. So 22 years, 3 years, something like that. Her mom introduced me to her. Her mom worked for the mayor, Susan Hammer. So I had a great team.
Well, so related to that, given that you essentially worked your way up, starting from Planning Commission, for folks who, this past election cycle, we actually saw several young first-time candidates around the region, and many of them had very progressive housing platforms. Given that you've worked your way up the ladder in elected office, what advice would you give to first-time elected officials or aspiring representatives?
I would find the people that don't really have your viewpoints, spend some time listening to them. No matter what, you should at least listen to them and tell them that you care about them and want to, as an overall goal, make it a better community and a better community for all. And I think when you talk about housing, make it personal. People respect the need that everybody has for housing. And I think if you make it personal, that does away with a lot of the prejudices and racial prejudices. I brought up the thing that happened in 1968 because we had the same thing happen with the Silicon Valley organization. It broke my heart when I saw that. San Jose needs to kind of go beyond that. And I'm sure we will, because we all recognize that's not a place we want to be. And, having housing for everybody and giving everybody a fair, equal opportunity is something that is inherently important for our society. And no matter what kind of community you live in, you should be working on this as one of your major goals.
Yep. I'm glad you brought that up. And I was wondering if you were going to draw the parallel there between the example you used back when you were at San Jose State and the Mercury News advertisement, and then today's version of that, which was the mailer. One example being the mailer that was.
Well, we see this all over California, the use of racial innuendos to defeat housing projects. And that is anybody that does that is sort of an immoral person or organization. I mean, my father was a World War II veteran and trained with black paratroopers who were discriminated against in the South. And when he got out of the Army and raised the 10 kids in the Cambrian Pioneer area and, went to work, he worked for Congressman Don Edwards in his company, but Don Edwards was the strong housing civil rights advocate in the 60s and 70s and 80s. If you remember, Congressman Don Edwards represented San Jose for a long time. And he heavily influenced the values of my family in San Jose, that we should fight any kind of discrimination that we have in our city. And we had to recognize it was here. It was an evil that was here, and we have to fight it strongly.
Yep. Well, kind of related, I'm wondering, can you, so much of what we do and so much of what we advocate for is, and I apologize, my cat decided to make a cameo appearance here. But so much of what we do and the issues that we champion are tempered by what is realistic to get through the process. Are there any kind of radical housing ideas that you had that you really would have liked to have moved through the process, but for the reality of getting them through the process?
Well, I think our governor likes big picture things, and maybe at some point he'll realize that to make California a state that establishes liberty and justice for all, and to end our obscene poverty that we have in California. We have do we know we have one of the highest poverty rates of all states in the United States? I think we're number 1 or 2 in the United States in percentage of poverty. We have to create these jobs and give them opportunities and build affordable housing. This extreme shortage of affordable housing is really hurting our equality that we have, and a lot of the stuff that comes out of that afterwards, like education, job opportunities, achievements, go back to poverty, housing, discrimination. And we ought to take that big picture and say the housing has to be a fundamental part of our state budget and our state economy. And why take 10 years? Why not take 5 years? Do a 5-year plan. Say I'm going to do it by the time I leave office. Funny, I recall him saying that when he first got elected. He said he wanted to do that, but why don't you go back to that idea and then get the brains and the, if we don't have money in the state budget, ask people for the money. Apple, ask people to support Google when they build a project, which they have, and we should continue to encourage the private sector as well as the public sector, but just cutting that need down, it's only going to grow if we do nothing. It's going to keep growing bigger and bigger. There'll be bigger and bigger gaps. And so I think focusing on that for the governor would be the big idea, and do it in a comprehensive way with everybody getting involved, all the cities, the big cities, the small cities, everybody, the rural counties, the urban counties, the business community, labor. Those people should be all for building more affordable. Environmentalists. Can't be a good environmentalist unless you're a houser. That's what I always tell people. Don't be a good environmentalist, and I'm a good environmentalist, have a really good record, and you can't be a good environmentalist unless you're for affordable housing.
Amen to that. Housing. Yep, here to that. And I know you got an award from the League of Conservation Voters local chapter a few years ago.
I got a lot of awards. I
you can't keep track. You've got a room full of all sorts of awards.
I got 40 boxes of awards that are in the storage, and I have to figure out what to do with them. My wife's looking at it like rolling her eye. It's like, what are we going to do with all this stuff?
Well, the brick one that you just got today is very.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I can use that. That's I like that. That's an attractive one. It's one of the best looking ones I've ever received.
So we've got a question here from Paul Smith. He asks, providing financial vehicles for affordable housing and reducing procedural barriers is essential, but affordable housing is not being built primarily because of exclusion by local government goaded by NIMBYs. What is being done about that?
Well, I think the pharmaceutical industry ought to invent a NIMBY pill.
All right.
A NIMBY pill would be something that you would take, and the NIMBY pill would cure you of your affliction that is kind of self-centered and maybe concerned about your future, your value of your property, and those kinds of things, and safety. And I think, do you want a society that we have more and more homeless, taking care of people with mental health and substance abuse problems, we built a lot of housing. You know where we built a lot of housing? In the jail and prison system. That's the housing we're building. And do we want to continue to do that and create that kind of environment, or do we want to reduce the poverty and reduce homelessness and help people have sustainable living and help the children achieve good school education? And so the NIMBY pill would be the two alternatives. really. Not in my backyard kind of means, well, you might have a little compromise there, okay, in your neighborhood. Affordable housing could be built in your neighborhood. In my district, in the Cambrian Pioneer area, when I was a council member, we had the lowest amount of available land of any district in the city of the 10 council districts, but we actually turned out more projects approved and built in the Cambrian Pioneer District than any other district of the city. We found little parcels, medium-sized parcels, and we, with churches, freeway, extra property, property we could purchase from schools, private property, and we built the affordable housing. And we had some council members that just told affordable housing developers, no, just don't bother. I can't afford the political price here. So I think, you know, when I was a council member, I got elected in 1980, and I got reelected 3 times with no opponent, despite doing this. So if you're a good, competent council member, you can do what I'm saying.
Mm.
And you don't have to worry about your political future, okay?
Yeah.
And so people ought to have, maybe you have a NIMBY pill, and then we have a political courage bill we'll give the elected officials, maybe.
Well, and what about an app? Maybe we need an app for that.
Yeah, something like that. I think, you know, I think I'd like to see happy school children going home and having good food, good place to eat, you know, happy families. You can't do any of that unless you have affordable housing.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up the point about social service costs, all those kinds of things. Homeless cost. There's a lot of money we're spending on other things rather than affordable housing that would go down, that would be reduced if we spent money on affordable housing. So I think government has to look at it more strategically. That was we were trying to get the state to do, and we have a hard time convincing people like the Department of Finance, and you know, they just look at the next year's budget and how much it's going to cost, and they don't look at more of a strategic kind of viewpoint. That's the job of the governor and the legislature. And I think the Senate kind of gets it right now. I think there's a majority. Tony Atkins has been a good leader on housing. We kind of get it. We need to get the governor and his people to kind of go with this idea that, you know, you can balance your budget by reducing costs, and you can reduce costs by reducing acuity, caseloads, the need for social health care and criminal justice services by providing somebody a place to live. It's one of the most effective cost-cutting things you can possibly do, according to many studies we've seen.
Yeah. Well, and this next question from Rod Sinks is kind of along the same lines. He asks, how do we work to change people's hearts and minds on the need to build more housing and get productive rather than fight new RHNA allocations? In Cupertino, they're going from 1,064 homes in the current cycle to over 6,000 homes in the next, which is 2.6 times the amount of housing in the Valco SB 35 plan. So I know you mentioned a NIMBY pill, but really how do we win over the hearts and minds of folks? And I think we'll make this our last question related to that. You know, what advice do you have for organizations like SV at Home and advocates, housing advocates? What's the advice that you give us to be more effective?
Well, rather than have fights over specific developments, why don't we start with earlier process that involves the community and get the community to discuss housing in the general plan process and look at the general plan on how we're going to meet the needs for affordable housing, because that is the requirement of the state law that you do that. So I think it's important that we have this genuine, you know, family around the table discussion kind of thing like we have in our family with, you know, mom used to have dinner and there'd be like, you know, 12, and then there'd be like another 5 or 6 people that kind of came every night for dinner. So we'd have about 18 people there. And, you know, that's where I learned to cook, by the way, because I was the second oldest. So I had to learn how to cook food, you know, for the big family. And you have to put the big tent together to get everybody under the tent and feel like they're included. And I think Tony Atkins is trying to encourage cities to do this big planning process with their general plans and get that coordinated so we can all come up with a definite plan in each community that everybody can agree on, or at least a majority can agree on. And I think the problem with Cupertino is they didn't have that. So when Valco hit, it was a development proposal by a developer as opposed to a community planning process. So we need to strengthen that planning process, and then at the same time give money to the cities. I strongly believe the state government should say, okay, we're going to require you to do all this planning and stuff, but we're going to give you some money to plan and build the affordable housing. And I think those combinations will make a big difference. And I think, you know, I always believe in good planning, good architectural, you know, quality, and I think we can have some views on that can take a pretty much streamline. If it looks good, if it's a good plan, good quality looking building, good project that, you know, isn't going to be an eyesore. They should go quickly. They should be approved quickly, because the affordable housing loses a lot of their value due to time delays. So anything we can save in terms of time is money into, like, we can build a couple more units. So cutting the time processing and fees, I think fees, they should talk about that in their general plan. So those are my ideas on that. Plus they should take an MB pill, for God's sakes, you know, don't get into reactionary. If you're a council member and you're a reactionary, leave. Don't run for re-election, please. Try to come up with some vision of your community. That's your job. You know, do your job, you know, make the tough choices. You know, it's a tough job. You know, I know how it was. I was there for 14 years. I did the city council in San Jose, rough and tumble. Board of Supervisors, 12 years. Legislature, 14 years. You know, I got a lot of scars, but I won most of the time. You can win. You can win on this politically. Believe me, I know.
Yep. Well, as we were coming to a close here, we have two more things that we wanted to do. Real quick, we wanted to share some toasts to Senator Beall. So again, I'm going to pass it over to Kriti. She has a very brief video from a few of the folks on the call.
Okay.
So go for it, Kriti.
Jim Beall, Senator, Supervisor, Council Member, Planning Commissioner, Jim Beall. You have done so much for so many in this community, and that is why you have been beloved your whole career. You stand up for people when no one else will, if it's a disabled community or people who need mental health services or the homeless. You can argue with the best of them about what kind of transportation Santa Clara County should be getting now and what it will need in the future. You really have been limitless in your fight for the people of this community. I am so grateful to call you a friend and a mentor. Thank you for all your service. Really, you will be missed.
Hi, I'm Santa Clara County Supervisor Dave Cortese and Senator-elect in Senate District 15, succeeding Senator Jim Beall, and I'm so honored and privileged to do so. Obviously, he has left me with big shoes to fill and tremendous work to do to follow in his legacy in terms of creating infrastructure, particularly housing for the Bay Area and for the state as a whole. I don't think anybody has reinvented the art of building alliances north and south throughout California among legislators in both houses of the California legislature to get things done in terms of transportation bills and in terms of housing legislation. Jim Bell, you have made a lifetime out of it in terms of your career at every level of government. The San Jose Planning Commission, the San Jose City Council, the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, your work in regional government on the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and on other agencies, and then of course your work in the Assembly and the State Senate. Congratulations on winning this award from Silicon Valley at Home, the Lifetime Achievement Award. I can't think of anyone more deserving.
So with that was very cool. And with that, we are basically at the end of our time. I want to thank you again, Senator Bell. You have been just an incredible champion for housing and many other issues. And I wanted to thank everybody else who came here to listen as well. Recordings of this and other events will be available on SV at Home's YouTube channel, and we'll go ahead and send out an email with the link early next week. And other than that, I'll just say we hope to see you all at our next SV at Home event, our members holiday party on December 14th. So stay tuned for more information and enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.